Alright boys, welcome back to another video. Swaggy here. Today we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. I think I'm officially ready to say that I was wrong about this team. They're 2-4, there's a lot of football left. For all I know, they could end up going 10-7 like I predicted them to, but I just don't think there's a chance in the world that that happens. The Raiders are terrible. They're one of the worst teams in football in my opinion. There's a culture issue. I think I was wrong about Antonio Pierce. I'm not sure if he was the guy for the job, man. That was a huge mistake. Patrick Graham, I thought he was underrated defensive coordinator, but the Raiders defense has been one of the worst in football this year. I mean, they're coming off of a loss against the Steelers where they gave up 183 rushing yards. They did only give up 145 passing yards, but they couldn't stop the run, and that's been a very common occurrence for the Raiders all season long. I mean, it's pretty sad, guys. It's pretty sad. You look at what they did to Najee Harris, 14 of 106, 7.6 yards per carry and a touchdown. I mean, how many yards per carry was Najee averaging coming into this? I think it was 3.8, or it might have been 3.9 at the top of my head. Had that 36-yard run where he was able to dive for the pylon. Just sickening, man. Absolutely sickening. Of course, there was a block punt. Aiden O'Connell ended up throwing an interception. Amir Abdullah on the goal line ends up fumbling the football. There was a play where the Raiders scored a touchdown, which would have cut it to a one-possession game, but that was called back due to a penalty, and then that's when Abdullah fumbled. I mean, let's talk about the quarterback situation. Aiden O'Connell ends up getting the start. They bench Gardner Minshew, who they gave a huge 2-year contract to. O'Connell, 27 of 40, 227 yards, an interception, a touchdown, 5.7 average, sack once, 47.7 QBR. So obviously it's not very good statistics across the board. A lot of that was because the Raiders couldn't run the ball, 19 of 57. And it wasn't like they were down big immediately. The Raiders actually were up. They had a great first drive that was capped off by an Alexander Mattison touchdown. And they never were able to build off of that, guys. Just mistakes after mistakes that cost you. The defense was playing very, very well to start this game, but it got to the point where they were just asked to do too much, and it just absolutely turned into a frenzy, man. I mean, this was, in my opinion, the worst loss of the season for the Raiders. I mean, actually, maybe the Carolina game, but probably the Carolina game, if I'm being honest. But losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, the way they did is pretty sad at home too. And then the Panthers game too, just it's not being prepared, man. It's a common occurrence of not being prepared. That's now 3 of the 4 losses were just the Raiders not showing up, not really having a plan. I'll cut them some slack for the first game. I don't know if I can even have any sort of excuse for this loss against the Steelers. You're coming off of a 34-18 loss at Denver. You've got a chance to bounce back, go to 500 to, of course, give yourself a chance to make the playoffs, right? I don't think there was one positive to take away from this game. Maybe the one positive was when it was over so that I didn't have to watch anymore if I'm a Raiders fan. But, I mean, both sides of the ball terrible. Getting a block punt. Justin Fields was not able to get the passing game going. The Steelers were one-dimensional the entire time. Even the play actions weren't working. It was literally just all the run game, and we didn't see enough pressure. The secondary obviously did a great job, but it just, the second level, the linebackers. Yeah, I think that's primarily why I have no faith in the Raiders, is because they're not good on either side of the ball, right? Special teams, amazing. They might have the best special teams. Yeah, special teams is definitely the best unit on the Raiders. Their return game isn't great, but their punter averaging the most yards per punt. Of course, they've got Carlson, who has been pretty much, I'm not going to say automatic, but he's been very good. He can kick 50-plus yard field goals as good as anyone in this league. But it's just, offensively, the Raiders can't run the ball. They end up getting Luke Getsy, who I still to this point don't know how he ended up getting hired. And his defense, he doesn't really have that much talent. I mean, he's got quarterbacks that are not even average NFL quarterbacks. He doesn't have a good running back. Like Alexander Mattison, I'm looking at Amir Abdullah, Zamir White, who apparently was injured. I thought he was just a healthy scratch. Dylan Lobby lost a fumble too. And Dylan Lobby was very good coming out of college, man. Former receiver, but it's just not it, man. No Devontae Adams. Yes, Brock Bowers is very, very good at playing football. Jacoby Myers outright. You're missing a lot of weapons. The offensive line hasn't been great, so I don't think Getsy's good, but the talent around him doesn't help, right? It's just toughness to this point, man. I don't think it's even necessarily a lack of talent defensively. Patrick Graham last season was dialed in, but this year it just has not been the same. The Raiders, they haven't been physical. They're not getting after you. In the last time the Chiefs lost a football game, a lot of people just forget this, was against the Raiders, and that was in Arrowhead. I mean, the Raiders just completely shut down Mahomes, neutralized them. There just hasn't been that same toughness. I don't know if it was because they fired their head coach and they promoted the interim head coach at the time was Antonio Pierce, and that sort of set a fire under their shoes. But just the full season for Pierce just has not been it. I thought the Raiders were going to do big things this year, and yeah, their ceiling was capped off with Minshew or O'Connell, but they had the defense, they had the weapons, they added in Brock Bowers. It looked like their running back, Zamir White, was going to have that breakout year we're looking for, but it just hasn't happened. And if I'm being honest, I think the Raiders losing out the rest of the year or losing as many games as possible is actually going to benefit them. I know they have the most expensive tickets, and I know that Raiders fans aren't going to want to hear that. But if this team can get their hands on Shadur Sanders, who has already been talking to your guys' owner, so clearly there's something going on there, man. If you guys can get Shadur, he's going to give you a chance to win every single night because of his accuracy, his leadership, and just his overall ability. But even if you guys don't want Shadur and you don't like the quarterback class, which a lot of people don't, Travis Hunter, and yes, I'm a Buffaloes fan, so that's why I'm biased. But still, just get a guy who can help you win football games, right? Hunter would be a great at a corner. I don't think he played a lot of receiver for the Raiders because they don't really need a receiver right now. I mean, if they are going to trade Adams, so I guess they kind of could use some help. But they've got Trey Tucker, they've got Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers. Can't forget about, of course, how they went out in the second round in last year's draft and ended up bringing in. Michael Mayer, who was out in this game. They signed Harrison Bryant as well in free agency, but I don't think there's a lack of weapons necessarily for the Raiders. It's more so just they need better production in the run game and the offensive line. But you're not gonna have a chance to win in the NFL without a quarterback, man. I mean, especially from a Colts fan too. Gardner Minshew, watching him last year, he does a lot of good, but he does a lot of bad, right? Like against the Ravens, for example, for you guys this season, we saw he had a bad interception, ends up bouncing it off and helping his team win that football game. But we've also seen a lot of bad, like he got benched. Like remember, you're being benched for Aiden O'Connell. There's just not much to take away from the Raiders, dude. They can't run the ball. They can't throw the ball. They can't block. Defensively, they can't stop the run. I don't think the secondary has been terrible for the Raiders, right? Like, I would say the only quarterback that really lit them up was Andy Dalton. And there wasn't a lot of tape in him in their defense, and then Bo Nix had a good game, but it wasn't like he threw for a ton of yards. So I just think there's a lot of work to do for the Raiders. The one thing going in their favor is they play the Rams next, but I don't even know if they'll win that game. Like I think honestly I'm picking the Rams to win that game. And then the Chiefs and the Bengals after that, off of a bye week, you're going to be more than likely at Miami against Tua Tagovailoa, and then Denver, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Atlanta. The Raiders are cooked, bro. Like the Raiders are absolutely cooked. I had this team going 10-7, and people called me crazy. Maybe they're right. To this point, they look right. I just didn't think that it was going to be possible for the Raiders to be this bad, but it's bad, man. I legitimately view them as one of the worst teams in football. They are absolutely garbage, man. They're abysmal, and I just don't see improvement coming. Because you have to understand, like, the only way they're going to improve is if the defense completely turns it around, is the defense we saw in the back end of last year. But even if they are, like, you still have to score. Like, the Raiders still are going to have to score. The special teams can't do it all. The defense can't just, get a pick six or a fumble recovery. Like, the offense is going to have to push the ball down the field. And, Aiden O'Connell, he's not going to be able to beat NFL defenses, man. He was supposed to be an accurate quarterback coming into the NFL, and that just hasn't been the case. Obviously, he doesn't offer any mobility. He's a statue in the pocket. And then the run game, right? Like, without Josh Jacobs, this run game has been non-existent the entire season. And they can't block, so... Yeah, I don't know. Like, the Raiders, they might not win a game. They might not win a game for a month. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the next Raiders win is in, like, late November. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all, dude.